Welcome to the gender economics lecture on the capability approach and the alternative measures. Basically, this is the lecture where we will see in practice what we have seen relatively more theoretical and at critic level in the previous class. So, how well feminist economics actually criticizes a major indicator and approach in economics, and how it actually creates an alternative for that indicator and approach. What I mean is GDP. Basically, GDP is an indicator that is, well, claims to measure the overall economic production level in the economy, although it focuses on more production that is happening within the market system. So products that are being bought and sold, basically. And basically, we could say this type of an indicator has limits. It certainly shows how our abilities to produce, and that ability might be an important indicator that could be that could play a part in creating a better society. But being able to produce more doesn't necessarily mean that we have a better society. Actually, social structure may make us to have less satisfiable, let's say, less, let's say, happy lives, or less satisfied lives, or anyway, worse type of lives, even if we are able to produce more. So in a way, I mean, the social structure that allows us to produce more might be connected to other type of let's say, social that may have other type of social impacts, which decide how we use what we produce, basically, and in the end, the way we use what we produce might make us worse off, not better off, in terms of our life qualities, basically. That's a possibility, but in economics, it's almost believed that if you produce more, I mean, that gives you ability to have a better quality life, and as a society, as an individual, and people, since they are able to do that, they should be able to manage to get that better life. And if they cannot manage to get a better life with more products, certainly they won't be able to get it with less products. Okay, it might be a challenge to use what you produce to get a good life, but if you cannot do it with higher production level, you may certainly not be able to do it with a low production level. That's the basic understanding, and that basic understanding is criticized basically with capability approach. And capability approach is actually, I mean, if we want to have an indicator that measures our well-being in the society, we should have an alternative. GDP is not doing that. We should have an alternative. And since this well-being, life quality, how our products are basically leading us to have a better quality of life, is something that is studied in economics. Welfare economics is dealing with that. Certainly, I mean, within the economics, alternative indicators that measure well-being may also be discussed. And in that sense, approach created by not a feminist economics actually, but an economist who has suggested various different concepts and approaches in microeconomics, who actually is not connected to any school, actually, who is a heterodox economics with his own tradition by his own right. That person is Amartya Sen. And even though initially the initial article he wrote on doesn't have the name capability approach, he's the creator of the capability approach. But while he discusses this the approach, he doesn't give the specific name capability to it. But he basically, I mean, the way he discussed the issue will end up with the overall capability approach, which were developed further by later economists, and actually has been a very effective approach in economics. We will see in this lecture how it has been effective. But let's start. So you can see here an interview with Amartya Sen. Watch it and think about it. And after that, of course, he briefly explained the issues and he gives certain examples that are related to his economic view. But this is, of course, a very brief interview. We will see kind of his views and how his views were developed further in coming parts of this today's lecture. So I assume you have watched it. Okay. Today we start with sense capability approach and gender inequality. Here, actually, the whole approach that goes also beyond Sen, started with Sen but goes beyond Sen, is discussed by Robbins. Then we will see the very article that is actually created this discussion in 1999 written by Amartya Sen, which is called The Ends and Means of Development. This is a very influential article. And now we will see, actually, in Nussbaum article, we will concentrate mainly on the critique to the capability approach. And then we will see actually one way the capability approach is used or kind of, let's say, mathematically certain indicators are brought up that are aiming to measure something that is not easily measurable. And that's actually the key, maybe the key point here at first. There was a famous tale. I mean, a guy has lost his keys somewhere. I mean, but he looks under the street light for his keys under the street light. They say, "Did you lost the keys here?" Someone who goes by. They ask, "What are you looking for?" "My keys." "Did you lost them here?" "No." "Then why are you looking for your keys here?" He answers, "Because the light is here." So usually in economics we tend to look to the places where light is, which is usually light means usually in case of economics data, available data, numerical data. But alternatively, well, some economists argue some alternative senses can be developed to look to the places where there is no light. So, without we might use approaches that don't have data, to look for things that cannot be measured numerically. Alternatively, we might try to bring light to those places, which means actually somehow make non-easily things that cannot be easily become numerical. And indexes are actually ways people do that. Things like democracy index, for example, you cannot measure democracy easily with a number, but those indexes aim to create numbers to measure concepts that are not easily so mathematical or not easily measurable, to measure those concepts. Of course, there are controversy when you are trying to measure those concepts, non-numerical concepts, when you make those concepts numerical. And in this article, we will also see the discussion that revolves around this attempt. But so let's start with Robbins. In case of Robbins, the main contrast between the capability approach and the developed by Amartya Sen, but developed further after him, and the traditional approach is this. The traditional approach is called by Robbins resource-based approach. Resource-based means that you use the overall production level, calculated by price level, to measure social well-being, which means in the end you measure the overall production, everything you have produced. You might think, what you have after the production is over. What machines, what goods, all the furniture, food, clothing, everything you have produced. You measure their value. You measure the value of the resources you have. Of course, this measurement itself can be imperfect, but I'm not talking on that. Even if we assume that we measure the value of our resources perfectly, we cannot know how much these resources contribute to the well-being of the people. The fact that we produce more resources doesn't mean that we are able to produce, we are able to have a society with better well-being, both at individual level, at distribution level, but also on average level, in terms of distribution and in terms of averages. So, when we use capability approach, we are able to measure the capability of people to meet their needs. Of course, we need to define their needs now, what the people need. But if we can measure people's capability to meet their needs, then we measure directly their well-being. And having more resources, as I said, especially if producing those more resources require a different type of social structure, which also determine the way these resources are used. In that case, this social structure may force the resources being used not in a way to meet people's needs as efficiently as it could, let me say. But defining the needs of the people is a challenge, certainly, what the people need in general. And finding a way to know whether or not they have met those needs is a even maybe bigger challenge. So this is the challenge this approach is bringing on us. I will continue in the next part.